It's time for the next story in Jason Aaron's Thor run. This is the third volume in the 4-volume series that eventually leads into Jane Foster Thor. And today we're going to be dealing with the accursed. Malekith has returned, the Dark Elf. How did he become the king of the Dark Elves? Well, today we're going to tell you that story as Thor makes his own team. In our last video, we watched as 3 Thors traveled through time to stop the God Butcher known as Gorr. With the power of 2 hammers, the current-day Thor managed to sap the power of Gorr and stop the God Bomb that had threatened to wipe out all of the gods and the known existence. Now, with the peace restored, a new foe rises from the pits of hell to tear down everything the mighty Thor has worked so hard to protect. It was a dark and stormy night as Thor flies through the skies of Midgard with his friend in his final moments. As Thor arrives at the prison, he offers Fulton the last known fruit from the Candelar tree, a fruit that its native planet is known for having wars over. Fulton bites into the fruit and he says that this is nothing like he's ever tasted before. This is surely one hell of a last meal. One of the officers tells Fulton that it's time, and Fulton then says that he appreciates him coming to see him again. But he understands if he has other places to be. Thor stands up and he walks with Fulton, telling him, "Nay, I will be with you all the way, to the gates of the other side." With tears in his eyes, Fulton tells Thor that he wished that he had met a god like him when he was still young and foolish. And as Thor walks with Fulton, he offers all the support he can as they head into the execution chamber. Time went on and Thor helped people around the world in need, whether it was grilling a dragon shank for the poor or giving rare seeds to the church, or offering his wisdom to the monks in the mountains. The world came to know Thor as a god who would do anything that he could to make it a better place, and they were thankful for that. However, there was one person that he couldn't swoop in and save the day for, and that was his dear friend Jane Foster. Cancer was the one foe that he could not beat or bludgeon, and Jane refused any form of magical help. She wished to beat the cancer on her own terms, and all Thor could do was respect her wishes. As the two sat on the moon to watch the sunrise, Thor says that perhaps he could summon one biomancer to consult her, and Jane tells him that if he does, she will go out with Hercules. He pulls her closely, telling her, "Thou'st would not dare." But while Thor stays in Midgard, performing what many would consider to be miracles, there is a boat sailing on the seas of Niflheim, the frozen land of hell. A pack of dark elves drinks the potion of fairy blood and bitter fruits, with ancient enchantments to conceal themselves from Hela and her Valkyries, if only for just a few moments. They know that if they fail this mission, they will never leave these shores, not even if they die here. What the elves seek is deep in the Hall of Nastrond, a prison for the most fearsome of the dishonored dead, and at times, the living. As they sneak into the prison, they hear no sounds, no screams of pain, and not even a whimper. That alone tells the Dark Elf all that he needs to know. Whatever waits to kill him in this place, he will never hear it coming. He knows soon that he'll be screaming in pain, and what he does next, he does without hesitation, as he cuts his own tongue to silence himself, and he presses on. The elves battle their way through the prison halls, searching for one man, the man that smiles deep within his hole. While the other elves keep the spiders at bay, Sourfoot jumps in to release Malekith from his shackles, but he's stopped by the vipers guarding the pit. Sourfoot shouts in pain, and Malekith laughs, telling him, "Yes, vicious little creatures, those hell snakes." Sourfoot holds out his dagger, telling Malekith to take it and hack his way to freedom. So Malekith reaches for the blade, telling him, "Yes, but your body seems to be in the way." Moments later, the loud cackling of a madman can be heard. And it's the moment that the battle stops, for all who here know what is to happen next. Malekith climbs out of the pit, covered in the blood of the vipers, and Sourfoot, shouting to save some for him. He's hungry enough to eat the heart of every spider in Nephilim. But after a fierce fight, it is only 2 elves that walk back along the shores, Malekith and Scumtongue the Tongueless. Later, in the halls of Asgardia, Thor gives toast to Volstagg the Valiant, the newly selected Senate of the Congress of Worlds. Volstagg laughs, "Ha ha ha! I will belch to that!" However, the celebration is short-lived as a dark elf in the hall begins to scream. He yells that the fires are spreading and his brothers and sisters are dying. The land of the dark elves is burning. It is with those words that Thor and the warriors of Asgard hurry to the Rainbow Bridge and they travel to the dark fairy realm. What they find is the slaughtered bodies of a tribe of dark elves, leaving only to question who could have done this. Thor looks around to see Scumtongue holding a blade with blood on it, and he asks, "Do you dare face full-grown gods and not children?" Malekith walks from a hut with a hostage, telling him, Scumtongue would stab the sun if he could reach it, but it is not so nice that Thor would attend the welcome home party. Before Thor can move, Volstagg tells everyone, "We must tread carefully. This is a dark elf civil war." Sif tells Malekith that he was sentenced to eternity on Nostrand, and she will tread carefully, all right, upon his face. Thor grits his teeth, telling Malekith, "You were always a coward, but killing your own people, that is craven even for you." Malekith presses the blade ever closer to the woman's throat, telling him, "Yes, my people, or at least I assumed that they would welcome the return of their rightful king. But it would seem in my absence, the Dark Elves have lost their way and grown weak. Now, a pretender sits on my throne." Malekith smiles, telling him, "So, I will continue to show them, wherever in the 9 realms they may hide, the Dark Elves will see the light by the time that I am done." More of Malekith's men appear, and Thor says that it will end badly for him, but release the woman. And Malekith says that he is in a rather generous mood. How about we share her? Malekith pushes the woman forward and he swings, cutting off part of her arm. She stumbles to Thor's feet, and using his hammer, he charges it up to cauterize the wound. The woman says they must stop him. He's going to slaughter his own people. He's going to hunt them all. And up in the skies, Malekith rides with his men, telling them, "The wild hunt is finally begun." Thor and the others hastily return to Asgardia to rally the forces to put an end to Malekith, but it is stopped by the All-Mother, Freya. She tells him that he must stand down. Their swords will not be needed today. It is time for her son to walk with her. As Thor, Freya, and Volstagg walk the gardens, Freya says that the Congress of Worlds has just finished a meeting on this very issue. Though leading a force solely of Asgardian warriors would seem an illegal incursion, there is a force that he shall be leading. Collective members from the different worlds have banded together to become what is known as the League of Realms. Of the Light Elves, there is Sir Ivory Honeyshot, Screwbeard of the Dynamite Dwarves, the giant Ogremonger Dragelvold Vin Silvos, the 17th. They've taken to calling him Augie. And finally, Ud, the Troll. A voice calls out that there is one more, and the woman from before with her arm cut off steps out. She says that her name is Lady Wizaria of the Dark Elves, and she is coming with them. Thor says that she has lost an arm. She should be seeing the healers. And she holds out a twig and uses it to regrow her arm, stating that it can easily be remedied. Freya says that perhaps it would be wise to have a Dark Elf in their party. A courier pixie has come from the Dark Elf realm. Queen Alphys of the Dark Elves has sought sanctuary with the Doors and is requesting protection of the Congress. It is time for the League of Realms to prove their mettle. The group leaves to the Rainbow Bridge to arrive at the realm, and things are a bit too quiet. Thor breaks through the massive doors to find Malekith's Dark Elves already killing everyone in sight, and he throws Mjolnir into the cauldron of molten melts, causing it to spill onto Malekith's force, shouting, "I swear on Odin's eye, all of you shall burn." And just as he does, Malekith himself stabs into Thor's back, telling him, "And I swear on the toe of Jolmung that you will bleed." The League of Realms rushes into battle, save for Ud, the troll. Ud sits back, stating that a troll of his caliber will not fight lackeys. "Bring me Malekith so I might kill him and claim the rewards and glory." Screwbeard runs over to a dying dwarf, telling him that he will be avenged. Just tell Screwbeard, where is dynamite? As Thor and Malekith fight, Malekith managed to cut into Thor's chest, telling him that it is foolish to bring a hammer to a knife fight. Just as he says that, the giant hand of Augie reaches in and starts through the elves. Thor tells Malekith that yes, I have also brought a giant. Now apologize to the hammer. While Thor begins to beat on Malekith, Screwbeard runs through the hall shouting, "Splode, big splode, big splode!" Seconds later, the side of the mountain explodes and inside the League pulls themselves out of the rubble. Wizaria asks if Malekith is dead and Thor holds up Mjolnir, illuminating the room, stating that Malekith has escaped again. Wizaria then asks if there's any sign of Queen Alphys and her men. Thor tells her that it's hard to tell without the heads. Ivory looks around, stating that their first outing as the League of Realms, it would appear that this is a most miserable failure. Ud shouts to hell with this arrangement. "I will find Malekith on my own. Just stay the hell out of my way." As Ud starts to leave, Thor shouts, "No one is leaving, and if anyone attempts to leave, you will answer to me and my hammer. I will smash your bones to dust and lay waste to your homes and rain fire on your homelands. You swore an oath, and you shall not forsake it. We ride until Malekith is dead, or we are." Soon the League finds themselves in Elfheim, chasing the shadows of where Malekith once was. The group of Dark Elves left behind are easily stopped, and everyone finds themselves in the same place they've always been, one step behind. Ud says that he is done with the League of Realms. This is nothing more than a farce. Thor says that he has an idea, and he tells Ivory that he's going to need some direction to the nearest tavern. If there is one thing that a feuding team can agree on, it is that there is always a good time to drink. Screwbeard and Ivory place bets on who can drink more, Thor or Augie, and Augie lets out a loud burp before falling over. Screwbeard scoffs, paying Ivory, and as Thor drags himself outside for some fresh air, Wizaria follows. She finds Thor sitting down, talking with someone to gain insight on the situation. As Thor goes on rambling, the hammer begins to rumble, and Thor says that he figured that they would say that. Rosaria walks up to the table, and Thor tells her that there would be a lot less wars if one would just learn to drink with one another. The drinks have claimed the others, but not you. Rosaria says drinking doesn't make her calm, it makes her. And Thor stops her, telling her, yes, I had other things in mind for you. And he kisses her. As the two look for a more secluded place, Malekith watches from afar, stating that it may be time to go where no god dare go. 3 days later in Jotunheim, the land of the giants, the Dark Elf refugees run as they are chased by the giants, all while Malekith and his men watch from the skies. Malekith flies low to kill one, but before he can swing, a hammer is thrown, knocking him off of his tiger. Malekith gets up shouting, by all the bugs, how I hate that hammer! Bring me the blood of that god! And like every other encounter, the League of Realms face the forces of the Dark Elves. Augie starts to fire his massive arrows into the groups, and Malekith tells him that he's the quiet one, isn't he? Let me see if you can make a sound. Malekith jumps down into Augie's throat, and then the bellowing scream of a giant can be heard. Everyone rushes over to see Augie on the ground, and Thor shouts, asking, tell me what happened. A voice says that he wasn't done listening yet, and then a knife shoots out of Augie's eye. Blood spurts out, and Malekith crawls out of his eye socket, telling him, goodness, for a giant, this one has a remarkably tiny brain. Thor shouts, trying to struggle as the rest of the league holds him back, and Ivory looks around, stating, we must take care. We are not in the land of giants anymore. Malekith says, yes, perhaps you should listen to the Light Elf. And then he tells Scumtongue to sound the horn. Scumtongue takes a deep breath, and then the low tone of the horn can be heard miles away. And what follows is a thoom, thoom, thoom. Of all the giants, there's one particular race that even the gods have learned to fear. The Frost Giants. And it is said that once you are close enough to feel their chill, you're already dead and just don't know it yet. Thor fights his own team, shouting, unhand me, the elf must die! Malekith laughs, telling him, yes, by all means, let the feisty little godling go. I'm sure his new friends here wouldn't mind. Ivory pulls at Thor, telling him that he must stop this. They do not have permission to enter the lands of the Frost Giants. To do so would be an act of war. Realms would burn. Ud says that he must listen to the elf. The odds are not in your favor. Mother of Maggot, this one is strong. Malekith turns to Azaria, telling her, it's nice to see you, loving the new arm. She yells at him that he doesn't get to speak to her, betrayer, and Malekith says that he's done nothing of the sort. It was his people who betrayed the old ways, the ways that once made the realm of the Dark Elves the strongest and the most feared. Once the yoke of Asgard has been cast aside, new alliances will rise, and perhaps even a rekindling of the former ones as well. Thor yells to the giants to hear his words. If they harbor the elf, he swears to the throne of Asgard that the mountains will melt, the frozen rivers will burn. He will turn their land to slush and ash, and them along with it. One of the giants tells him, you are welcome to try, and he spits an icicle into Thor's face. He follows up by telling them, you don't have to worry though. If the elf can't deliver what he promised, we will kill him ourselves. As Malekith leaves with the Frost Giants, there's a faint rumble, and then lightning strikes to the ground. More and more bolts of lightning come down, ripping into the lands. And Ivory says that that's enough. They are gone. What in the world are you doing? Thor grits his teeth, telling him, I'm digging a grave. And the lightning continues to carve out around Augie. The League follows the little of the trail that they have, and they find themselves in Vanaheim. And just like everywhere else, the Dark Elf refugees are already killed and maimed. As they investigate the scene, Wazaria says that Malekith is the greatest sorcerer in all of the realms. His eyes and ears are everywhere. And Thor says that he believes her to be right. Perhaps we have a traitor in our midst. Wazaria says that that is ridiculous. What reason would any of them have to side with Malekith? And Ivory asks her, what reason indeed? Wazaria asks, what? You think that I'm the traitor? Malekith murdered my entire village and cut off my arm. The group all begins to look at Wazaria as the traitor, and Thor walks to them, telling them, it is time for you to pay the price for what you have done. Suddenly, Mjolnir flies up, hitting Ud in the face, and Ud yells, asking, have you lost your mind? I will tell you limb from limb. Before Ud can strike, Wazaria binds him and says that they should talk about this before they do anything harsh. Thor grabs Ud, telling him, I've never known a troll who could be trusted. We were fools to bring you along. Ivory steps up, stating that this must be stopped. There is no logic in this. And Thor slams Ud onto a stone, telling him, no, my eyes are finally open. What use is the troll to us? He sat by and did nothing. However, he was quick to hold me back in Jotunheim. Whatever Malekith has paid him, I truly hope it is worth your life. He raises his hammer, and Ivory shouts that they must bring this to Congress and let them decide his fate. To execute a troll will make war. And Thor tells Ud, you are hereby found guilty of crimes against the 9 realms. By the power vested in me by the throne of Asgard, Thor, god of thunder, has condemned thee to die. Everyone yells for him to wait, and as the hammer comes down, the lightning fills the skies. Blood drips from where Ud's head used to be, and Ivory says their league just keeps getting smaller. Thor looks at them and says, there is no more League of Realms. But among the bodies, Malekith watches, stating, bravo, we may make a god of you yet. Thor tells everyone, where we are going, we must ride far and we must ride together. We are going to a world where miracles happen, Midgard. Thor then takes Wazaria down to the one place where Malekith will be heading next, the Dark Elf Council of the Unhallowed. Kankar walks the two of them down into the lower chambers and there's a scream that can be heard. Thor sees a group of elves huddled and asks, "What are you doing?" And Kankar tells him, "Doing what you've asked of us, debating your proposal." In the middle of the group, two elves slash away at each other and Kankar says that this is how dark elves debate. Though this is still only a rudimentary phase, we've only gotten into the introductory stabbing. Thor steps into the crowd, yelling to the dark elf nobleman that he is Thor and they must hear his words. One of the councilmen asks, "What are you doing? How dare you disturb the sacred proceedings? You are interrupting the introductory stabbing." Thor then tells them Malekith must be stopped. The tribes of the dark elves need to stand as one. Put aside your old rivalries and embrace change. Hold open elections to find a ruler who will unify you. The councilman says that this is impossible. In 1,000 eons, it has never been so. It has always been the tribal leaders who rule. Now remove the foolish god and resume the stabbing. That's when a scream can be heard outside, and Thor tells Kankar, "Tell those outside to stand down and let Malekith and his elves enter to meet with his traitor." Wazaria says, "Wait, you don't think that I'm the traitor, do you? You killed the troll." And Thor says, "You can go with them and tell him that Thor awaits." Wazaria shouts, "You are a fool of a god," and she blasts him away. But the magic she used on Thor does something and there's a rumble in his stomach. Seconds later, a giant centipede crawls out of Thor's mouth and Wazaria asks, "Now do you see the true Thunder God? There was never a traitor, only you." Malekith walks into the chambers and Wazaria says that that's how they've been following us. "Thor, you were bugged." And Malekith tells her, "Yes, I had one of my elves slip a spell into Thor's mead back on Asgard, before the whole ordeal even began." As Malekith raises his sword, he tells Thor, "It is a shame that you've murdered the poor troll for nothing." And then a voice says, "I wouldn't say that," and the centipede's head is cut off. Ivory, along with the rest of the League, says, "The League of the Realms hereby sentences Malekith the Accursed to die," screaming. Malekith stops, stating, "It's impossible. It can't be the same troll." And Ud shouts, "I was promised a fight with elves worthy of my awesomeness." And Rosaria says, "Yeah, that's the same troll." A bolt of lightning shoots through the air and into Malekith, and Thor lets out a battle cry as he brings his hammer up. As he slams it down, Malekith fades and he says, "I won't die so easily." Thor grabs the blade that Malekith swings, asking him, "Who said your death would be easy?" As the two forces collide, Malekith says that it would seem that he knows a bit of sorcery. "It is quite a show that you put on in Vandenheim." Thor pushes his energy into Malekith, telling him, "You don't grow up being the brother of Loki without learning a few of his tricks." Malekith picks himself up, telling him, "Fine, I will show you some of mine. This man's kidneys just turned into a pair of starving rats. This one's blood turned into lava, and that one's eyes have turned into vipers." Thor throws his hammer, shouting, "That's enough! What madman murders his own people?" Malekith opens up a portal that the hammer flies into and says, "A madman with a vision, and the strength to see it through." While the others battle, Screwbeard shouts, "Where is the one called Scumtongue? The one who murdered my brothers?" Scumtongue jumps in, kicking him, and then he stabs the stick of dynamite and his hand into the wall. Screwbeard throws the bottle onto Scumtongue, asking him, "Why do these elves always fight with knives? Use real weapons like dynamite and acid." Ivory quickly takes aim to shoot out the fuse of the stick of dynamite, and then Ud appears, hacking off Screwbeard's hand. As the two get away from the explosion, Screwbeard shouts, "You gotta cut the fuse and not my hand!" Ivory tells everyone, "Come on, we have to get back into the fray." Then they each call out their reasons for fighting: for Elfheim, for Slaughtervine, for the trolls, and for Screwbeard's hand! Malekith begins to cast his magic on Thor, telling him that he just turned his liver into a tangle of broken glass. What says the God of Thunder now? He then spits up a piece of broken glass into Malekith's face, and he says, "I do not need a liver to kill an elf." With a thunderous punch, Thor knocks Malekith to the ground, and the councilmen then all surround Malekith, and they tell him that if he doesn't stand up, they'd pardon him. Thor then tells everyone to stand back, and he holds out his hand. Mjolnir then shoots out of the ground to where Malekith teleported to, and it flies in, smacking Malekith in the back of the head. Just as Thor gathers his strength, the councilmen all begin to shout for him to wait. The Dark Elf Tribal Council has done what he asked. They have reached a decision. Later in Asgard, the councilman announces that, let it be known today, before gods and elves and all the lesser beings, that Malekith the Accursed is hereby the anointed king of the Dark Elves. The entire room stands asking, "What? Malekith tried to slaughter everyone and you make him king? Who is responsible for this insanity?" Malekith walks to Thor, telling him, "He is. He wanted the Dark Elves to stand together, and so they have. Dark Elves are not weak little creatures looking for a mother to love them. They only follow the leader that they fear." Ivory says, "King or no king, Malekith is still a wanted criminal and he belongs in the Nostrand prison." Freya steps forward, stating that this is true. If the Dark Elf realm would have peace between their realms, then Malekith's debt must be paid in full. He may take the throne at his leisure, once his sentence is served. Malekith says that he would like to invoke the royal right to call it proxy. And Freya says, "Who would volunteer to take your place?" A A voice shouts that they will, and Rosaria walks up stating that she will be his proxy. Thor runs over asking why, and she says that she does it of her own free will. This will end the bloodshed and her people will be safe once more, but beware, your people will not. Just leave me with one last memory to keep me warm in the land of the dead. She kisses Thor before she's taken away, and Volstagg asks, now that you have approval of Congress, who will you have sit in the Congress of Worlds? Malekith looks at Scumtongue and says that he knows just the elf. Volstagg says, right this way, Senator Scumtongue. After the halls are cleared, Thor stands looking out over the garden, and Ivory tells him, one could go quite mad trying to figure out the Dark Elves and their ways. Thor says that he understands them. They have played him for a fool. Ivory says that he wouldn't say that. The Thunder God ended the bloodshed, and Thor says, nay, I am a god who saved the elves and doomed the rest. Later in Muspelheim, the Frost Giant walks with Malekith, asking if he thinks it's a good idea. Malekith says, relax, son of Jotunheim. I know what I'm doing. As Guardians have their League of Realms, why should we not have the same? Just let me do the talking here. Now there you have it. Now you've discovered how Malekith became the king of the Dark Elves. If you may be wondering, there's one more storyline that takes place before Original Sin happened, and then Jane Foster became Thor. Then all of our Jane Foster Thor stuff happens, and then we get to go to the War of the Shi'ar and the return of Odin's son. I'm trying to bridge the entire Jason era run for you guys. That's why you'll notice that in this storyline, that's when Malekith became the king, and that's why he is the king during the Jane Foster storyline. Now, for the rest of the Thor playlist, click up here somewhere. I don't know where it's going to end up on the screen. Something recommended by YouTube will be right alongside that, and subscribe to keep up on the Thor storyline as we fill in all of those gaps that I stupidly left in there for you.